The building was built in the 1880s. It was built as a rope factory, and they call them rope walks back then. And they're long, skinny buildings, and they made rope out of hemp fiber for the tall ships, the big sailing ships coming into the port of Portland. And so it's probably one of the oldest continuously used industrial buildings in the city. The rope company went out of business in the 1930s, and it was used as a warehouse and all kinds of stuff. I don't think anyone ever envisioned that it would be used as a brewery, but it has been for the last 25 years. We're celebrating our 25th anniversary this year. Three main ingredients of beer. There's water, and the Pacific Northwest, and Portland in particular, has got excellent water. Our water source is the city water source, which is the Bull Run Reservoir, and that's a reservoir up in the Mount Hood National Forest that captures rainwater. So essentially we're making beer out of rainwater, but it's very clear, it's very soft, it's very pure. The only thing we do on the water is we filter it, and then we take the chlorine out with some activated charcoal. But besides that, we really don't have to do anything with it. It's really nice water. The other main ingredient is malt, barley malt, and wheat malt. I'll get to that in a second. But what really gives the beer a lot of life and a lot of spark is hops. And the hops that we use, most of the hops we're using actually are grown just down about 35 miles south of us in the Willamette Valley. And hops are they're a flower from a hop vine. They look like this. They're like a little cone that is picked, and it's picked off the vine, and then it's kiln dried, so it's kind of dry like that, and then it's pressed into bales, and that's what these big things are here. Those are 200-pound bales. If you look at the middle of the hop cone, you'll see this nice kind of yellow resin inside. Gives you the nice pine, citrus, grapefruity flavors that smell it. That's where you get that really beautiful aroma in IPAs and pale ales. We do use some foreign hops, but most of the hops we're using are coming out of Yakima and Oregon, so they're fairly close by. There's not a lot of transport involved. Some brewers will go to bring a lot of hops in from New Zealand or Australia or Germany or Slovenia or all these other places, and those are all good hops, and we use some of those too, but the majority of what we're able to do is able to use Northwest hops. So that's a good thing as far as trying to get things in and out. We buy about 100,000 pounds of hops a year. Hop growers love us because we use about 1.5 pounds of hops per barrel. If we were making Budweiser, we'd use less than 0.5 pound per barrel. So even as small as we are, we use a lot of hops. So we use the hops to make us as much as a much bigger brewery would use. And we keep them cold. They're like kind of any kind of agricultural product. You want to keep them cold, keep them fresh. We've got about a week's worth that we can pack into this cooler, and then our main warehouse on Columbia Boulevard has got a huge hop cooler in it, and we store about a truckload at a time out there. So we store a lot of them out there. What we want to do when we make beer or wine, we want sugar, and then a sugar source, and then we want to ferment that sugar and turn it into alcohol and flavor and that sort of thing. With wine, you have some kind of fruit, like grapes mostly, but it could be berries or apples or it's just about anything else that's got sugar in it. But you take that fruit, you can put it in a tub, stomp on it. The fruit's actually got yeast on the outside of the skin that are there already. If you stop stomping on it, it'll start fermenting, and you've got wine. If you take barley or wheat, a grain like what we make beer out of, raw barley or grain, and you put it in a tub, and you put water and hops on it, and stomp, all you'll get is sore feet, because it doesn't do anything. It won't ferment, it won't turn into beer. What we have to do to make beer is we have to take that grain and we have to germinate it and sprout it first, and kind of modify the hard, steely kernel that would break your teeth if you tried to bite onto it into something that's easy to crunch and is easy for the sugars to get formed. So our grain is grown in eastern Washington. It's in the Palouse country. Most of it's barley, two-row barley, a little bit of wheat, and it's malted across the river over at Great Western Malting Company. So in another move to reduce our carbon footprint, we don't move stuff around from overseas or from the Midwest or from Canada. We pretty much buy everything that's coming out of the Northwest, and all I have to do is call my maltster on Monday, and I can get delivery Tuesday morning. So it's pretty easy to deal with. When we're milling, we'll blend the malt that's in these two big white silos. That's pale malt, so it's a very low color. It's just kiln dry. It's called pale ale malt. That goes into these big hoppers, and then when we make a brew, we're blending the colored malts from next door in with the pale malt. They go through the mill, and they go through a couple of different rollers here. First roller's got kind of a coarse serration, so it cracks the grain open, and then the second rollers have got a fine serration, so they kind of mill it to a finer grit size. And what we're doing there is we're just trying to get the stuff exposed so that we can blend it with water and get the sugars out of it, convert the sugars. So the mill is kind of the first step in brewing. And when we mill, we're milling about 4,300 to 4,500 pounds per brew. So about 2¼ tons per brew. It takes about an hour to mill through this. This is a German mill, so very, as one would expect, very precise and somewhat expensive, but it paid for itself pretty quickly actually because it's very, very efficient. So we can get about 95% of the amount of sugar available out of the grist because of this mill. So it works out pretty well actually. So this operation goes on and off during the day. Starting Sunday night, somebody will mill in, and then 3 times a day. We run 3 brews a day, so they'll just keep going and going and going. We use a very common classic English style of brew house. It's called a single infusion mash. And it starts with the grist hopper up top with 4,200 to 4,500 pounds of grist. Goes into that cylinder right below. It's called a Steele's masher. That is classic 1880s British technology. The only thing different between that and probably 200 years ago is that you probably used to have a couple of big guys. Instead of a motor, they had a couple of big guys with a winch at the end trying to turn this thing. And what that does is there's water hitting one side and grist coming down the other. It mixes that up, forms like a really thick porridge called a hot mash, and that dumps into the mash tun. The mash tun's got sieve plates on the bottom of it. The bed on that is about 3.5 feet thick, and we just let it sit there for an hour at whatever temperature we're trying to hit. And at that temperature, there's natural enzymes in the malt that are activated, and they start chomping away at the starch and turn them into sugars. So we can form this nice sugary liquid called sweet wort in about an hour, and then they tap the mash tun and they pump the liquid out, and they sparge or rinse that grain bed with hot water until they get all the sugar out of it, or most of the sugar out of it. And that's all pumped into the middle tank, the brew kettle. Brew kettle is where we add the pelleted hops that we're using. Some are high bitterness, some are high aroma. Oregon specializes in high aroma hops. That's mostly what we're using. For IPA, we use 3 different hop charges, and they're all aroma hops. And we get about half the bitterness out of the brew kettle. And then we pump into the last tank, which is a whirlpool tank, so it's pumping it at an angle and it's kind of swirling. And it's kind of like if you take a teacup that's got tea leaves in it, you swirl the teacup, all the leaves will go to the middle, all the hop bits go to the middle of the tank there, and then we can decant off the clear, hot, bitter wort. And it'll finally go through a bed of whole hops, those leaf hops like I was showing you in this last tank called a hop jack. And that bed of hops in the hop jack gives it a huge hit of aromatics and about half the bitterness that ends up in the final beer. And from there, it's still boiling hot. It's sweet. It's very bitter. It tastes absolutely horrible. Even for people like myself who like that flavor, I don't like it. It's just from here at the mash tun, it tastes sweet and toffee-like and kind of like breakfast cereal. It's just really good for you, and it tastes very nutritious. It's like really good espresso. Except it doesn't taste like espresso, but it's really sweet and hot and really picks you up. That's great. This tastes absolutely horrible, but it's supposed to taste horrible at this point. And it goes into a heat exchanger, and the heat exchanger hits it with chilled liquor on one side, chilled water on one side, and hot wort on the other, and comes out with hot water on the other side and chilled wort on the other exiting. The hot water we'll use for the next brew. The chilled wort goes over to the fermenters.